good evening, everybody. I hope everybody is doing lovely this evening. This is AJ, and this is AJ's Political Views, and here I go again. Stirring up the city. That's what I do over here. I give you food for thought. You all know what I do over here. Acting people in politics and also making political speech easy to understand. But I try to do my best to cover everything that needs to be covered out here as it relates to people that look like me and other folks as well. That's what I do over here. Now listen, there's a question going around out here asking if people that look like me are racist. Well, I say not. And tonight, I am going to prove to you that we are not. Believe it or not, we're living in a time where there is racism and hate. Well, people that look like me have been living in that time. I mean, that seems to be the norm. We just keep experiencing this. But I'm just saying. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to talk about racism in a different way. I'm going to tell you how racism and hate is a part of political policies, people, and things. And then I want to talk to you about the codes of hate and racism. In other words, just because they may or may not say it doesn't mean that it's not there. People like myself, we only address to what is thrown our way. We're not the ones to set out to hate anybody. For the most part, we try to love everyone. But we have to address various things that happens to us, and we have a tendency to do that. That's what we do. And when we do it, people tend to say, you guys are racist. But we're not. We're not. We didn't create it. We didn't stamp it. And we didn't approve of it. Get where I'm going. You get what I'm talking about if you was in this live earlier. It's not to create any type of division. It's not to cause anybody to dislike or hate anybody else. But it's about us getting a better understanding of the state of the union and the state of this country. And we need to be able to identify disturbed type of individuals. And these individuals represents racism and they represents hate. They might just be on your job, or they might, in some cases, they're in your neighborhood. And in some cases, they are all around you, disturbed individuals that have these type of thoughts in their minds and hate for individuals because of the color of their skin, because of their culture, because of their history. Is it necessary? Is it necessary to have these various types of hate to thrive in this country? Is racism needed? Is racism necessary? That is the question. Is hate needed? Is hate necessary? Now, mind you, we all are human beings. We're going to visit various things from time to time. But when it sticks, it becomes a problem. When it becomes a part of your everyday routine, it becomes a problem. When your language and your actions adds up to the same outcome time and time again, it becomes a problem. So there's nothing wrong with a temporary experience. But when we talk about these things, these elements, some folks have gotten beyond temporary and it's the norm. And when it becomes the norm, it creates problems for everybody. In the area of communication, in the area of relationship, in the area of religion. It creates problems in the area of unity. It causes nothing but problems. And a lot of folks don't like to have this type of conversation, especially a particular group that is known to do it quite often. But it is necessary for everybody to take part in this discussion tonight. And I welcome you. I welcome you to the live. I'm going to read my disclosure, and then I'm going to go and give shout outs to everybody. I want to welcome everybody in here. Let me read my disclosure. The assessment of any individual or policy, including the persons mentioned here, is not based on knowledge from a personal interaction with any one person, but is only offered here as thoughts and opinions, primarily based on things read and seen that may be of news media, tabloids, blogs, rumors, conspiracy theories, and other platforms where conversations and speeches are held, which means that all is seen as untrue until proven otherwise. This is for entertainment and educational purposes only. I am your host, AJ, and this is AJ's Political Views. We can have these type of conversations without having major problems, everybody. And we can tell the truth without telling lies. You know, we don't have to be like some political individuals. But we need to be able to identify the character and the personalities of folks in this country. Hate when it shows its head. Now, some may ask, why is this necessary? Necessary to have these types of discussions. And it's because the state that this country is in right now. We have people that are in power, all right, that are either disturbed type of individuals, or they're racist, or they're full of hate. And even in that, we have individuals that are self-haters. They are disconnected from their history and their culture. And they too are taking part with other individuals that are part of racism. In other words, they look like me, but they don't act like me. And so we have all different types of situations that are going on in this country that is making it difficult for us to live every day. Because many of us have been forced to do things that we probably never had to do before. Forced to get alarm systems. Some of us have been forced to having to protect ourselves because the craziness that is going on in this country and the rhetoric that is being spoken by some of these politicians in office. And on top of all of that, we're having to deal with policies that have the codes of racism and hate. And people that implement these various types of codes can be the poor, the rich, the popular, those that are successful, and those that are in power. They could be judges, lawyers, attorneys, managers, your supervisors. They could be CEOs of a company. All right? They could be a janitor or a trash collector. It doesn't matter of what your profession or career could or might be. We saw that at the debate. At the debate, we saw the code. We heard the code of racism, the code of hate. Because everybody that smiles in your face is not your friend. Because when you have a code by word, then you follow up with deed. You have various political leaders say that they're not racist. They say they don't have a problem with a particular group of individuals. Everything that benefited individuals or supported individuals, the Afro-American, African-American individuals, and other minorities in this country, various laws that were implemented because of racism, because of hate, they had to do special things for certain individuals in this country in order for us to get a fair shake. In order for us to be seen as equal, they had to implement various policies in this country to give us that fair shake. But there are certain individuals that have made decisions to go after those policies, to shut those policies down, all while they're saying they're not racist. You have certain individuals that we have tell them time and time and time again that Confederate flags is offensive to us. A Confederate flag does not mean the same to us as it means to you, but they refuse to stop raising Confederate flags. And that is a code of racism. So you don't have to say it with your mouth all the time. Sometimes you show it with your deeds. Sometimes it's seen in merchandise. Sometimes it's an institution. It's an organization. Now listen, those that say BLM and all that was driven by racism, it was a response to racism. Everything that Afro-Americans do, African American, whatever you want to call us, you know, because people got different days of what they call us, and minorities in this country. Anything that we do is a response to how we are treated. It is a response that for racism that is coming in our direction. Because we did not create racism. We did not create hate. Now, though there are individuals that are in our community that may have hate, but there are individuals in our community that don't wake up in the morning, figure out how they can do something wrong to somebody because of the color of their skin. Individuals that look like me have no problem with the color of your skin, but we do have a problem with your rhetoric. We do have a problem with your policies. We do have a problem with the way and how you treat us. And when we respond accordingly, we are in return called racist. When we respond, we only respond to what you do to us, but we're called racist. But I got news for you. We're not racist. We are only on the defensive. We are only trying to protect our sons and our daughters. We're only trying to protect those things that belong to us, the things that were taken. So when you talk about hate, that is something that is embedded in somebody's heart, and it's very difficult to get it out. That is something that they have held for years and years at a time. They go to bed with it and they wake up with it because it's so strong on the inside of them. That's what it is. This conversation tonight, what I'm talking about, is food for thought. It's a wake-up call. So let me go into your statements and read off. Thank you. Let me see who else is in here. Let me read this. Rich, I know from history that BOK and YT people took from your ancestors in their time, but not from you. Now let me address that because I think you make a valid point right there. Let me explain something to him because maybe he don't understand. They are taking from us every day. Okay? There have been laws implemented in this country that represented our communities and gave us the resources that we should have because things are not equal in this country. The justice system is not equal. All right? Housing is, the bank system is not equal in this country. The money is not equal in this country as it relates to pay. As it relates to opportunity, that is not equal in this country. We are still dealing with it. Racism never ceased to exist. Understand that. And the policies remain. They just changed the name. That's all. Jim Crow is still out here. They just changed the name. That's all they've done. They reconstructed the ideal. They're still doing the same stuff. So yes, and as it relates to slavery, which you talk about the history of slavery, your ancestors and people that are living today are living off of old money that was gathered during the time of slavery. It was gathered during the time of Jim Crow. And if you all can live off old money, why can't we live off old money? Why can't we get the reparations? Because that's old money, right? You're talking about, well, that's what your ancestors went through. No, that's what we're going through. We're still going through it right now, this day. Nothing has changed, my friend. Nothing has changed. Now, when you talk about the 1%ers, let me say this. Let me put it this way. Most of Caucasians in this country, if they are struggling and if they are poor, in most cases it's by choice, but it don't have to be that way. Because there is always an opportunity where they can just show up at a particular place with a suit on, with a piece of paper of a degree. They can just show up at the supermarket, just show up at any given time if they present themselves appropriately and get whatever they want at any given time. They can buy a brand new car and drive in a community, and I mean any community. They can drive in any community and don't have to worry about an officer pulling them over because they are driving in a brand new car. They'll never question how you got the car. They'll never question how you got this house. They'll never question why you got those kind of clothes on. They'll never question how did you get this job. They never have those type of experiences that we have. So racism still exists. That era of Jim Crow still exists. Like I said, they just changed the name. That's all. That's all they've done. And we don't bring racism to individuals' door. They bring it to our door. We don't look for individuals to hurt or to cause harm upon. We are more dangerous to ourselves than we are anybody else. Don't get it twisted. And although it may sound good to a lot of individuals that want to say, oh, y'all, but it's y'all too. No, it isn't. We're not the ones running around here, as I stated earlier, raising Confederate flags. What is it about my people having pride in themselves? What is wrong with us having pride? When you start talking about BLM, we didn't have any flags raising up that shown that we had an issue with you all, that represented hate, that represented racism. It represented pride. That's what we were talking about. We was talking about protecting ourselves for the corruption that was going on within the justice system as our young men and women were being unalived every day. But BLM flag is not a flag of history. That flag is not hundreds and hundreds of years old. That flag doesn't represent the Civil War. That flag doesn't represent racism. But the Confederate flag does. There is a difference. Are you telling me that Confederate flags represent you guys' pride? Are you telling me that you all embrace that flag because that's who you are? Then if that's the case, you make my argument valid. And if you are, I get it. I have no problem with that. We have every right to remind people that have forgotten that our ancestors built this country. We have every right to say that. We have every right to say that. We have every right to say that we're not being treated equally in this country. We have every right to say that. We have every right to say that corrupt officers are unaliving our sons and daughters. We have every right to say that because that's what BLM was saying. It was saying, look, we want you to take notice again, because we've always had to do things for certain individuals of racism to take notice of what was happening in this country. We always had to find a policy to protect us, a policy to give us rights. But you all never need any special policy in a way where, you know, we got a special program for you over here. We got a special program for your housing. We got a special, see, we got to get special programs in order to survive in this country. We have to have special programs when we are Americans just like you. We were born in these lands. And I get it. It's kind of hard for some people to accept that we are native and African as well. I know that's very difficult for some people to accept, but that's our reality. We didn't ask for it. That's who we are. Don't hate us for it. Don't dislike us for it. Don't try to make our life difficult because of it. Let me see. The Confederate flag means nothing to me. The American flag represents my country. Well, let me ask you this. If you are an individual that is a part of a particular party and movement, all right, that have various elements of racism, and you are taking part of that, what does that say about you? Why would you take part of something that you are not? Don't say that the Democratic Party is racist as though the Republican Party is not. Because who are implementing policies of racism as we speak? Who are raising Confederate flags? They are doing that now as we speak. Who is unaliving our young men and women in the streets? They are doing that now as we speak. And I call them, a disturbed type of individual. They're very shrewd. And they know how to say things without saying things. Okay? And so they think that people are not knowledgeable about certain code words and the way they say things, their sentences and their paragraphs and various things like that. They got many different ways of having that type of conversations. You could literally, hear me good, have certain people that are racist can be in the company and the presence of you and have a conversation right in front of you and have all type of racial undertones, and you cannot know exactly what they're talking about right in front of your face. Right in front of your face. And they're looking at you and making you feel a part of the conversation, making you feel welcome. They're laughing and grinning, and they calling you the N-word without calling you the N-word. Oh yeah. They calling you a foreigner without calling you a foreigner. All right? When they call us, and I talk about this this morning. When they call us African American, yeah, and anything that has Africa, which we are a part, that is a part of our descent, but Native is a part of our descent as well. But when they say these things, they trying to disconnect us from these lands which belong to our ancestors. All right, and they try to disconnect us from the land. This is all coding. I talked about how Jesse Jackson, the individual that came about, him and a few what they call leaders came about with this ideal that we will be called African American, as though we all agreed to it. And I don't know if everybody agreed to it, because there's a lot of us in this country, though we 13-14%. There's a lot of us in this country. So I don't know if all of us agreed to be called African American, but there are certain racist people had no problem with embracing that term, because that's another way of them trying to disconnect us from these lands. That's why they don't see us as Americans. When they talk about Americans, they are not including minorities when they speak on Americans, okay? They're talking about the people that they believe are superior, and the individuals that they believe that God has chosen to rule the world. That's their mentality. That's their thoughts when they say Americans. And the reason why they act that way, because they know who the true Americans are. And that has nothing to do with racism. That's why they want to erase history, because history represents the truth, and they can't handle the truth. So they would rather get rid of the truth, because if you tell the truth, they can't call you racist, because speaking the truth is not racism. It's just truth. It's facts. Who are the original individuals that have state in these lands? We are mixed individuals. We have many different types of cultures. We represent the world. We represent Africa, and we represent America, and we represent, in some situations, Europe. That's why we're hated so. I talked about that this morning. That's why we're hated. And that is why racism exists. It exists because of hate. Hate is the component of racism. It is the foundation of racism. But people got to have a reason to hate you. Why do they hate you? They hate your history. They hate your truth. They hate that your color represents power. They hate that the lands in which they live don't belong to them. They hate the truth. But we don't have a major problem with them possessing the lands, because they've already possessed the lands. But in order for them to feel good about having lands that don't belong to them, they have to throw everybody outside and make it seem that they don't have any ownership to the land in which they stand upon. This is hate. Now listen, racism, as the definition of it says, what is racism? Racism is prejudice. It is discrimination. Okay? And it represents hostility. All right? Enmity, opposition, hatred, friction, bitterness, resentment. That's what it represents. It comes through by an individual, a community, or institution, or policies, or laws. It's against persons and people. Biases. It represents certain memberships that they are against communities and groups, certain social communities, certain lifestyles, various things like that. People can be prejudiced against many different types of things, but it's different when it comes to a particular racism element where people dislike you because of the color of your skin. But I got news for you all. It's deeper than somebody disliking you because of the color of your skin. The color of your skin represents your history. The color of your skin represents your culture. The color of your skin represents your true names. The color of your skin represents the lands in which you live and the lands in which you were born. It represents you being a native. It represents you being an African. That's what the color of your skin represents. And so don't get it twisted. They don't hate you just because the color of your skin. They hate you for what's behind the color of your skin, which is your history, which is who you are as an individual and who you are as a person. But unfortunately, many of us have forgotten those things. Many of us have forgotten who we are. AJ, have you read African American History by Alton, Ormsby Jr.? I haven't. I haven't read that book. But I want you to understand where I'm coming from here. And the thing is, and I'm going to say this right here. Just because you're embracing yourself shouldn't give somebody a reason to dislike you. Just because you put on a dashiki, okay, or you wear earrings in your ear, or you decide that you don't want to take on a certain religion, just because you decide that you want to speak the truth about who you are as an individual should not give anybody a reason to hate you. Just because you call yourself a native shouldn't give anybody a reason to hate you, but they will hate you for it. Just because you may say you're an African, they would hate you for it. Because you got to understand that Africa represents gold. Africa represents silver. It represents diamonds. It represents oil. It represents all the necessities that the world needs. It's beautiful. It has all type of animals over there. It represents a people, persons and things. But even when you start talking about Africans, they don't get it. Because the propaganda throughout this world is real. Even propaganda is racism. It is a code of racism. When they spread falsehood throughout the world and throughout the country, it's propaganda. It's another form of racism. So I want people to understand why it exists. Now, when I said a disturbed type of individual, what I'm talking about is that some people in this country are just full of hate. All right? And it's a flood. To the point now they're taking it to a place of feeling good about unaliving people. That is a dangerous person. All right? That is a dangerous person. That is when hate has overturned and overflowed, and now they hate. It's just hate, and they don't care. And when they see somebody that they dislike, as examples of a young man that was in Walmart, and somebody just came off the street and said that something was wrong with them mental and emotionally, but they had 50 or 100 peoples in Walmart, and they particularly chose a young 18-year-old Afro-American boy and unalived him. There are stories throughout history and throughout this country as it relates to people that look like me, African Americans, being unalived because of hate. Just being taken out because of hate. But I want you to know that for somebody to go to that extreme, to unalive you, it is more than just the color of your skin. And that is something that we need to know. Because they know the truth, though they speak lies in a lot of ways. And when I say they, I am speaking of the very individual that I have up here, full of hate, full of racism, a particular individual that is disturbed to a degree, somebody that may be in power, somebody that may be implementing policies in this country to make it difficult for certain people in this country. And they do it by their codes and the words that they say and the actions that they do. And they continue to do it. And they want to say to us, slavery is over. No, it isn't. Because there are many people that are colonized mentally. Many people in this country that are colonized emotionally. There are people that look like me right now, those Afro-Americans, those that are in power, that are disconnected. All right? Disconnected from their culture. Disconnected from their history. They hold high office in this land. We got one on the Supreme Court. We got one in the Senate. We got a few in the Congress. They look just like me. Okay? Individuals of power. But they are disconnected because they are colonized mentally. They are colonized emotionally. They are still living in the plantation house. They still desire to pick cotton. They still desire to cook for master. They still desire to wait on somebody that can care less about if they wake up or if they go to sleep. They're still hanging on to something that they think is greater than themselves because they don't know who they are. They don't love themselves. They have forgotten the color of their skin, and they have forgotten what's behind that color. And so we don't have to debate back and forth if we are racist, because we are not. We just got individuals that are jealous of us, envy of us, and hate us for the truth. We did not build the truth. We did not create the truth. Our ancestors had a part to do with that. That's what is truth. They had a part to do with that, not us. And then they come through and they say, listen, hold up, brother, hold on. Sir, listen. Why are you people playing victim? Why are y'all always playing the victim? Why are y'all always talking about racism? If I can compare something that happened hundreds of years ago to something that is happening today, nothing has changed. You hear me? If there are policies that this country implemented during the time of Lincoln and before that, during the time where the colonies existed, during the time of Jim Crow, during the time of certain presidents in this country, if those laws are very similar to the laws that are being implemented today, it means that nothing has changed. It means that racism still exists. What that means is the hate still exists. What that means is that we still got disturbed individuals in this country that is seeking to make it difficult for certain people on these lands. And the reason why they want it difficult for us, because they know who it belongs to. They know who it belongs to. And listen. We know our history for the most part. And we really don't have to keep throwing it up in certain individuals' faces, but they give us no choice because they want to erase it. We got to remind them of it. See, we got to remind you of it because you're trying to erase it. See, every time we're trying to do something for ourselves, somebody show up on the scene and make it difficult for us and then complain when we respond accordingly. All right? You go back in history and during the time of Reconstruction in this country, which was a component that represented a new beginning for ex-slaves. Reconstruction was the beginning of making us whole, making us equal, giving us our land, giving us the things that belong to us that our ancestors worked for. And see, people say, why are y'all still talking about it? Okay, so listen, during the time of history, during the time of during the era of colonies, during the time of Lincoln, during the time of the Reconstruction, during the time of Jim Crow, all those things, all those eras that we went through, they were supposed to give us stuff. And they attempted to do that, but then They changed their mind because of racism. They compromised because of racism, and they didn't do it. So they still owe us.